in a field of oilseed rape now, and as you can see, it is starting to flower. I suppose one of the concerns that we saw with this field is that there's a bit of patchy or variable growth. And I suppose one of the concerns that we've had over the last, I suppose, couple of 18 months maybe or so, has been an increase in clubroot. A disease that's caused by a pathogen called Plasmophyra brassica. It's basically causes sort of roots to sort of expand, sort of to produce sort of lots of galls in the roots, which can clearly cause a restriction in the uptake of nutrients. Now, these will sort of start to get infected as soon as the oilseed rape starts to emerge or starts to grow. And what will happen is they'll grow fairly rapidly under the right conditions and really restrict growth. In the field we're in, for example, look, the growth hasn't been restricted overly during the winter months, but now as the crop has started to extend, we can start to see that. In some fields, you may actually see this very early on in the winter as that crop actually will die back. Okay, so it is a serious disease, one that affects, I suppose, a wide range of hosts. It's not just oilseed rape, it's all brassicas are really going to be subject to this. And I suppose one of the concerning things about this disease is its longevity. It is a really long-lived sort of pathogen. So once these are in the roots, it forms these galls. This will die back. Now, whether this crop comes to harvest, these will die back and they'll rot. And as they rot, they'll release those spores, and they're very long-lived spores, into the soil. Now, when I say they're long-lived, we think, look, they could live over 10 years, maybe up even to 20 years. We're not 100% sure on that, but it is a long-lived one. So when we talk about oilseed rape in terms of rotation, we're talking about a minimum of about a 5-year rotation. And that's a combination of diseases, but clubroot is definitely one of those diseases that does need that long rotation to take it out of the brassica. Because if we have these sort of galls, they're dying back, releasing it into the spores into the ground. If we go back in with another oilseed rape crop, there isn't a break for those. They are actually able to infect straight away. Now, this is important from an oilseed rape perspective, but then we also have to think about what else might be in this field, for example. Are there brassica weeds? Are we going to be putting a cover crop in that might have a brassica species, or even a host that actually will be susceptible to this? Because in that sort of concept, it isn't necessarily a break. Even though we may not be putting oilseed rape back in within 5 years, if we're allowing for a carryover of volunteers, if we're planting specific cover crops that are susceptible, that is not a break. And that's very important, because this allows this disease to keep inoculum high. In this, if we come back in 5 years, yeah, we'll find clubroot again. It may impact it very early on. So with this field where we have this clubroot, we'd probably be stretching that rotation out a little bit further. But in fields that don't have clubroot, it may be a case that actually it isn't looked at, it hasn't seen a problem. There may be a very low level of inoculum there, and actually going below that in terms of that rotation will allow that inoculum to build up, so that when you do put in an oilseed rape crop, that actually it could get severely hit from the disease. One of the other things to remember about it is that, look, clubroot is one that thrives in a low pH. So actually, if you are in a situation where you have clubroot like this, check the pH. If it is low, make sure to get some lime out for future crops. If we do get back into a longer rotation and we do get back in, we're here with oilseed rape, we want to try and reduce any inoculum that will potentially get in there at that stage. Fields that don't have it, good long rotations with oilseed rape, management of weed species, careful management of the volunteers, and exactly also then the cover crops, making sure that we're not putting in susceptible varieties and shortening that rotation. Equally, the lime is very important. But one other thing to remember is that if we have oilseed rape or you have clubroot on your farm, careful management of actually the movement of machinery and potential movement of soil into fresh area is very important. We want to minimize that as much as possible. So for those fields that have infection now at this stage, as I say, a long rotation is going to be vitally important. Reducing volunteers, potential volunteers, any of those weed species, and managing cover crops to make sure that there's no susceptible host in there is going to be important. If you do want to come back in with oilseed rape after that long rotation, now we're talking probably more than 5 years, being honest, there is a possibility that actually looking for a resistant variety. There are a number of varieties, I think, coming through that have got some level of resistance.